Here's a related question. What's your position on women in combat? Haven't heard too much from you on that. When I was ready to fly jets for the Air Force, it was 1977, 78. We hadn't seen any women pilots in combat. We hadn't seen any women pilots in commercial aviation, really many of them either. And I thought that being a pilot was a steely-eyed missile man thing to do, and I wasn't sure that girls could do it. And I didn't like the ideals of girls doing it. And then we started to watch women get involved in combat, and I got to meet some people, some women who were helicopter pilots. I had women flight instructors, women who were instructors on my instrument rating, for example. And they're superb. Superb. So that's not the end of the story, however. There's a bigger part to the story than this. So my opinion on women in combat is nuanced. The first thing I'll say about women in combat is this. If they cannot pass the exact same physical, mental requirements than men, then they should not be in combat. If a woman can lift the same pack and carry a 150, 200 pound, who am I kidding? A 200-pound man with 150 pounds of equipment on her, if a woman can carry a guy out of combat as well as a man, that's the first step. But if she can't, then we're just going to get people killed, right? I have heard, now I don't know anything about this, I just heard this anecdotally, but I have heard that when you see a paramedic go out, when an ambulance goes out, it used to be an ambulance would go out, but now they have to have a fire unit go with the paramedics. You see this all the time in LA anyway. You don't ever see an ambulance deploy without a fire truck. And I have been told, anecdotally, that the reason is because paramedics can be women, but if you need to physically carry somebody out of a building, you might need a fireman to do that. Now, part of this is accepting the reality of reality. The fact is, my vision in my left eye was too soft for me to be a 2020 fighter pilot, so I didn't get what I wanted. I know there are a lot of women out there who want to serve our country and a lot of women who want to serve in combat, and I know that they should have a right to do that. But if they are incapable of doing the physical requirements that men in combat have to do on a daily basis, then by saying, well, we're going to allow you to do this in spite of that fact, that means that sooner or later somebody's going to be killed because they weren't carried out of a situation where a man could have carried them out. That's the first level. So what this means to me is, if a woman helicopter pilot qualifies on the helicopter to the same standards as the men, then she is an asset and needs to be treated with absolute equality. Now, we talk about women in combat, we're talking about actual ground combat. We're not talking about air-to-air combat because, frankly, a fighter jet can be flown by a woman as well as a man. We did see, as women were being phased into jet fighter roles, we did see some preferential treatment where women who were not as good as they should have been got promoted and got opportunities, and they messed up. And that's political correctness at work, and I have no patience for this at all. But the fact remains that there are many extraordinarily excellent women pilots in the world out there today, and if they get to qualify to the same standards as men, then they should get to do it. Now, ground combat's a different story. There's very few women that can lift what a man can lift. And this is just the reality of the situation. If you look, we've had this conversation before, but it's shocking, really, if you think about it. If you look at the fastest woman in the world, the woman who just set the 100-meter dash record at the last Olympics, and you look at her time, you will find that there's not a college in America that doesn't have at least one, if not scores of males who can run faster than the fastest woman in the world. Many high schools have men that can run faster than the fastest woman in the world. Most high schools have many, many, many men that can lift more weight than the strongest woman in the world. It's not a criticism of women. It's the biology of the situation. When you start denying the reality of the world, you are no longer a conservative by my definition. So, if you have a woman that can carry a guy out of there, that's the first thing. Now you get into more subtle issues. And the more subtle issues are not even that. Let's assume, for example, for the sake of the argument, and it could be the case, I'm not saying it's not the case. Let's assume for the sake of the argument, you have a woman who's strong enough to be able to carry a man out of the battlefield, lift the same amount of weight, pass the same physical standards that a man can pass. Then you get into a separate issue. And the separate issue is, Are women, just beat me to it, are women prisoners treated the same way as men? They're not. Women soldiers are raped by the enemy. Men aren't. Well, they may be, but they're not virtually guaranteed to be. And you could even say that a woman who wanted to fight in combat, who voluntarily accepted that risk, deserves to fight. But there's one more level to this, and that level is this: if a woman is deployed in a combat unit, and it is known that she will suffer treatment that other men will not suffer as prisoners of war, does that then cause her male squad members to take risks that they would not have taken otherwise in order to protect women because they're women? And by the way, it's got nothing to do with test scores and nothing to do with, well, she scored a 90 or in this she carry 100. No, men are built to protect women. And I don't care how deadly that woman is. I am concerned. I don't have the answers here. I'm not pretending to have the answers, but I am concerned that a group of men would expose themselves to unnecessary risk in order to protect women squadron members of their fire team. I could be wrong about this, and if I'm wrong about this, I'd be happy to admit that I was wrong. I don't know the answer, but I suspect that men would take risks that they would not otherwise take to protect women on their team. And frankly, if they didn't, I'd be really disappointed in them. Now, with that said, let's get some of the ridiculous stuff out of the way. You have women who are, I mean, what was her name? Jessica something in the Iraq War. Look, you have soldiers fighting, and everybody's armed in theater. And when you have a truck driver or any other personnel, and things start going south, and these women are just putting up a fight, I want those women as well trained as they can be. They're deadly. They're just as deadly as anybody else. I've been out on the shooting range with people who are watching this show right now, and they punch holes in things that just astonish me and make me feel like, my God, I'm ashamed to show my face. So yes, of course, I want them to be as deadly as possible. I want them to be as capable as possible. There's without doubt probably hundreds of thousands of women are more qualified than many hundreds of thousands of men in terms of some of this combat stuff. But I don't know the answer to this. What I do know is this: I am not willing to have our soldiers killed for somebody's theory. I'm not willing to do it. And I'm not willing to have somebody killed because somebody thought it was unfair that they didn't get to go. It is unfair that you don't get to go. Life is unfair. It was unfair that I didn't get to do what I wanted to do. It's unfair that I didn't have the vision to fly these jets. It's unfair that some people are too short to be basketball players and some people are too big to be jockeys. It's unfair. So my answer to this would be this: if it could be proven to the satisfaction of the people whose lives depended on it, that women in combat are capable of meeting all of the physical requirements of men, and that women in combat further are treated by the men in their squads as men, and that they're not taking any other risks, then I have no problem with this whatsoever. I say good for you. Anything that we can do to make people live the life they want to live, to have the freedom to fulfill their sense of their own destiny and purpose in life, I am behind. But I will not sacrifice people's lives on the altar of political correctness. Now we have here She-Wolf, who says she disagrees about protection. She says that if you're one of the guys, then the guys treat you like a guy. If that is true, I said I don't know. If it is true, then I have no objections. I have none. But I don't think we get to pretend that there's not a serious issue at work here. So that's that. 7:54, we got one more. Let's do one more. We'll call it a night.